You probably just want me to move into the banter section, I would bet.
Nah, just start the stream, like with the intro and everything. Just do that.
Yeah, so that's what it's doing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a lag on it because I see it now. Okay, cool. So, yeah, just put it into banter, I guess. Now, where are we?
We're in banter land at this point. That's just the banter part of the show in terms of the whatever you call it, the Streamlabs setup. It's not necessarily the intro, so I can always go backwards if we want to go that route.
Okay. Well, yeah, no, I'm seeing us live. We're live. Hey, Blake, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you doing? This is a wild setup, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little interesting.
Yeah.
So just to kind of let everyone know who's watching on YouTube right now, we are gonna try our best to in the future do live streams. We figured, we've done the audio podcast for a while. We tried doing video for a while in a studio, and that was very labor intensive. And so again, we're just trying to provide an alternative way to listen to the show. And if you're tuned into here to YouTube, you'll get a little bit extra with us as well. You'll get Blake and I kind of bantering before the show. This is the
actual
before the show.
Banter.
This is actual banter here. We are not recording yet, so the show is not live. And this is just us kind of hanging out. And we wanted to provide an opportunity to engage with the community a little bit more beyond the show. And we're trying a couple different things. So yeah, I don't know what else to say there.
I just hope this is a fun kind of way to interact with us, because I feel like we have Slack, but there's other ways that we could be interacting with people throughout the show. So this could be a cool little fun experiment to see how it goes with chat, both here and hopefully on Twitch at some point as well. But I don't know. I'm just stoked that it actually works. This was a lot simpler than I thought it was going to be.
That's good.
Takes time.
That's very good. I think, like you said, Blake, we're going to start small scale. And we're just starting with YouTube. We have a built-in audience there. We have, some subscribers on YouTube. So if you get the notification that, hey, we're live. So welcome everyone. And we'll see people eventually trickle in here, and hopefully chat. If you're listening, hey, give us a chat. We'd love to hear from you. With that, so what you can expect from these like little before the show, during the show, after show thing is we're gonna be putting together the show notes. We didn't do it today because we were actually running into a lot of issues setting this whole thing up, and we're glad that we actually got it working. Thank you, Blake, for being able to set this up for us. So we got the show notes all ready to go. We got this thing good, and it took us about an hour to do so. So
yeah, we lucked out for sure. Yeah, I feel like it could have taken longer, but who knows? It's not that big of a deal.
So yeah, here you'll get everything. You'll get us counting down to recording. You'll get us, just sitting here awkwardly silent while we're running, padding for some time during the show. It's gonna be gritty. This is how we actually record the show. This is not a well-produced product. It's gonna be a live stream. That's what it is. So welcome. Thank you so much for watching. And with that, Blake, where are you at? Are you good to record? We want to look over these show notes really quick.
Yeah, let me take a peek at the show notes really fast.
Sure, yeah.
I'm going to record on my end just for a second to make sure everything works, because I tend to have that issue. So give me just a moment.
That's good.
1, 2, 3. Does that work? Yep, cool. All right.
Yeah, I need you to look at the blurb, because I put that together briefly, and
rad. So what are we doing here?
Oh yeah, oops, didn't have the title there.
Extra info, granted patents.
There you go. There's the title.
Sweet. Oh, are these from Patreon, or is this from Patreon?
Those are not from Patreon.
No,
we don't have a no. We didn't have any this week.
Right.
But we will hopefully.
I think that's fine. Then we have this UX subreddit stuff.
Yeah, we got 2 from the UX subreddit today.
Cool. And then interesting graphics. Yep. Okay, cool. We're good.
You know what? I'm going to, in the plug after the Patreon commercial, I'm going to mention that, hey, we're on YouTube again.
We made it back.
After jeez, I got to look.
How long was that? The last one that we actually did? Probably like 2 years
I'm looking
ago?
now. I feel like it had to have been like a 2-year hiatus. From YouTube,
going hard in the paint.
The last one we did was episode. Okay, so hold on. It's weird because we did a backlog where we uploaded episode 99, and that was on February 3rd, 2020. So that was a year ago. But
Are those like the audio only joints?
Those are the audio only joints, as you say.
My mom still asks me, like, why can't I see you in the audio only versions? Because they're audio only. Wow. She's so funny about it. She's like, I missed the ones where I could see your face.
The last one we actually did live was September 12th, 2019. So it's been well over a year since people have seen our ugly mugs.
Yep, and it's worse now. I tell you that much. Worse for the wearers.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm good if you are, Blake. I think the notes here are good. I'm checking the article one more time to see if there's any other interesting pieces that we want to bring in. But I don't think so. Yeah, I feel pressed to speak because we're on a live stream, but that's okay.
I wouldn't worry about it too much.
All right, thanks, man.
Not a big
You're
deal.
Here for emotional support.
Yes. There we go.
Great.
Oh, banter-wise, I gotta remember what in the world I'm supposed to talk about. Oh, that.
Yeah. What
did I? Okay, maybe I put this in there last week when I thought I was gonna be able.
You probably put that in there last week when neither of us could get to the show.
Yeah, I did. Yes, that's so exciting. Yeah. Oh, this other thing came up, and I wanted to talk about it. Maybe I'll find the article while we're talking. Makes like an accessible shoe or something.
Oh, cool. Whoever else was on there just dropped off.
Yeah, that's why I let you know that it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this recording will eventually go up, right?
No, so that's what I was saying. I can't locally record, so there's no way for it to actually go up. So this is all live, and that's it. I don't think the live stream saves on YouTube, or if it does it? That's even better.
Yep.
All right. Well, welcome to Blake's an Idiot.
Blake's an Idiot.
.com.
We should. I don't want to say that on air.
Oh, do you not?
No, it's just more work for us. I don't want to commit to it. But I'll say it. But we should. If someone is so kind and is watching right now, if you could just simply leave a tag in the comments below with the timestamp that the show actually starts, that'd be incredibly helpful for anyone who's, not watching live.
Not looking for banter the whole time. Yeah.
Totally. Or the pre-show or whatever it is. All right, man. I think we're good to go here.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
You good to record on your end, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Why don't we do the countdown here and we'll go. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, it's episode 192. Today is February 4th, 2021, and this is Human Factors Cast. I'm your host, Nick Roome. I'm joined today by Mr. Blake Arnsdorff.
What is up, guys? How are you?
Hey, man. I'm good. We got an excellent news story for you, and we're tackling some questions from the community. But we're going to be talking about Microsoft patenting this chatbot technology to revive dead loved ones. And you know what? We're back after a week of technical difficulties. I had a family emergency. So apologies about no pod last week, but we're back. It's just two dudes putting on a podcast, two white dudes putting on a podcast together. So
across the internet.
We don't have an extended support system for this stuff. So when one of us misses the show, it's a little difficult to find a replacement. Anyway, but first we got some programming notes here. I want to mention this because I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. Virtual 2021 International Symposium on Human Factors in Healthcare. Human Factors and Ergonomics in Healthcare. Registration's open now. We brought you coverage of this for a couple years. Hopefully we'll be able to provide you some this time. Not sure yet. We're still working on our plans. But anyway, aside from that, I got to know what's going on in Blake's world, because it's been 2 weeks since we talked.
I know. It feels like it's been longer than that. But really, man, the biggest thing going on in my world is I feel like I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how Streamlabs worked last weekend. After like my computer finally turned on Sunday, so that was a lot of fun to kind of go through and try and make some of this stuff. But as you know, pulling back the curtain, none of that really worked out today. But nonetheless, the one thing that I found kind of crazy the other day, because I've really gotten into wanting to be able to kind of produce my own covers of different music. And something I didn't know existed or that bands put out into the ether for you to be able to like purchase kind of cheaply is like album stems. So actually the production recorded basically separate pieces of an arrangement. So think of like for in my case, like a song I really want to do a cover of is a song called Loon, where I want to do like the drums, vocals, and guitar. And I was able to actually purchase the album stem from which it came from. So I can like put that in my little Logic X Pro DAW and cut out different parts of the music, speed up or slow down parts that I'm trying to learn on drums or on guitar, and like put like different little kind of production spins on stuff inside of Logic that kind of help you learn different kind of like different musical notes and stuff like that. So it's been really cool that, again, like although it's kind of like sucked being so isolated from a lot of COVID stuff, but it's something I wouldn't have gotten into because I wouldn't have gotten back into playing a lot of music without kind of the force being back at home thing. But it's been kind of a fun thing to do over the weekends and throughout the week. But yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you. So forgive my ignorance here, but the stems, those are those just like the raw tracks of each of the individual instruments and the vocals and all that stuff?
Exactly, yeah. So it's the raw tracks, and in some instances you can actually get some of the effects that are used on top of them, so that you can actually like separate out what was used on top of a vocal, for instance. But yeah, album stem in its basic form is just like a song stripped into its different sections: so drums, bass, guitar, vocals. If there was multiple guitars, you get that too.
That's cool. Can I ask how much different in price it is from like an actual album?
Yeah,
because in the album it's all mixed together, right?
Yeah, it's all mixed together. So what did I pay? So the album for this particular one is like probably $12.99 or something like that, or like $9.99, and then all the album stems was like $30 for the entire album.
Okay,
so
that's completely reasonable. Is this how people do things like remixes?
I actually don't know, because I'm sure that you can rip a lot of this stuff, but if you want to do it in a way that makes it so you have full control, buying album stems is probably the best bet that you can even do that. But
that's cool, man.
Again, I didn't really know that was a thing, or that people sold their album stems. I thought that was something you like coveted and hid from everybody.
Right.
Luckily, in my case, it's not.
I didn't know that either, and I'm glad you shared that with me, because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a fun time, man. It's a fun time. But how's everything going in your world?
Oh, things are going. I don't know if you've been keeping up with this whole GameStop saga.
For anybody who's listening that hasn't heard of it, can you give us a breakdown of what you think is going on?
Yeah, the internet thought they could outsmart Wall Street, and they basically all rallied behind GameStop, which by a lot of people's measure is a failing business. There's a lot of reason to not think that. There's things are turning around in the future for sure. But a group on Reddit kind of hopped on this bandwagon, myself included. We could almost use this as the "it came from Reddit" section. But the interesting thing here is that the group on Reddit started following it, and they jumped on it, and more people started becoming aware of this. And as this happened, a lot of people surged onto this stock, and the stock price soared. And there were some unique circumstances around this specific stock where it has been shorted more shares than are available, which means at some point the people who shorted the stock are going to have to pay everything back. And so everyone was like, if we just hold on to this, then we'll get a lot of money because we get to set the price.
Oh, okay. This makes a lot more sense now. I kind of am understanding the concept and what's behind it all.
So what ended up happening is that people saw that high number, and they sold, and they started selling. And then as soon as there started becoming this like huge momentum, a couple things happened that really killed it. So you had Robinhood, which is an app that we recommended a couple weeks ago on the show, which I can definitively say don't do it now. They started limiting the sale of the stock, and there's some linkages behind the scenes with some of the brokers and some of the money makers and market makers and the people who borrow the stock. So it's like it seems a little conspiracy theory-ish to me, but
going on back there.
There's some ties, and I think what ended up happening is that just Robinhood didn't have enough money to cover the shorts, or to cover the stock that people wanted to buy, and so they kind of limited it, and everyone was freaking out, and it killed the momentum of it.
Yeah.
And so over the last week, it's kind of dropped a lot, and like I said, myself included, I was in on it, and once I realized it wasn't bouncing back up, I kind of cashed out and put it into another thing. And I'm not a financial advisor to say that, but it's kind of crazy to watch this whole saga unfold. And, it's just it's an interesting time. Made some money, but like this whole thing is like, well, I mean, I was talking with Frank a couple weeks ago, who was on the show with us. And we were talking about stocks, and we've been talking since about stocks, and he got in on this thing too. And we've been kind of sharing, our thoughts on it and like exit strategies and all that stuff. And it's been a lot of fun to get into the hobby. And then, this whole, I don't know, the whole thing that happened with GameStop specifically, it was romanticized, and people were getting greedy, myself included. I thought, wow, how great would it be if I could turn, a certain amount of money into something that's like 20 times that.
Yeah,
that's
something
insane.
astronomical. Yeah.
And it's like, well, if I just keep holding on, but if I sold at a point, then I would have a lot more money at this point. And so it's one of those things where I've learned a lesson from this. I didn't actually lose any money, which is thankful. I got in early enough to where the amount that I spent on it wasn't ever really in jeopardy. I could see it coming from a mile away, and I could cash out for some profit. And, the lesson I learned was kind of setting up some of these limits to where after it hits a certain high, if it drops a certain percentage, then just get out. Don't worry about it, because, that way I at least secure some, some capital for some profit off of it, basically, and I started really getting into sort of when to buy and when to sell. And like I said, I've learned a lot of valuable lessons from this, and I hope a lot of people did too, right? I know there are people, Blake, that got, in right at the peak of the hype. They were like, oh, it's 320. That's a deal. It's going to go up to like $5,000. They bought in at 320 and they held on to it. And now I think at the end of today, it was something like 50 or 60.
Wow. Yikes.
Yeah.
Goodbye hype train. That's nuts.
Yeah, dude. Like it's sad to watch. And so it's 53.50 right now after hours.
53.50. That's wild. I remember when it was that, like, what was this, 2 weeks ago that we talked about all this stuff?
Yeah.
That's nuts,
and that was about the price when we talked about it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And offline, off the show. And yeah, man, it's just insane to watch this whole thing play out, because like yesterday, even it was I think let's see here. Monday, it was up to $227 still.
Wow.
And you just think about 4 days, and it's gone down to a quarter of the price. So I'm upset. My son's upset about the price. I don't know if you can hear him in the background.
Perfection. That could have come in at a better time. That's amazing.
Anyway, yeah, that's what's been going on in my world. I've been fascinated by this, man. Like, and it's so weird to find yourself falling for some of these internet. I'm going to call them conspiracy theories, right? People are comparing it to like QAnon and how people get sucked up into this whole thing. And again, like my financial situation was never really at risk, but it's one of those things where I'm like, I just got to set some rules and follow them, and don't like get caught up in the greed or anything like that aspect of one of these bubbles. Because if I had played it smarter, if I had played my $20 rule, I would have walked away with a lot more money than I did. Again, not a financial advisor, but
Yeah.
learn what you're comfortable with in terms of risk, and learn when to sell and when to buy, and don't don't tank your life savings. That's the most important part.
That's super an important takeaway for sure.
Only bet
That's
what you're willing to risk.
yeah, and like kind of be smart about it for sure. You know what,
Yeah.
Nick? I really apologize, but it appears somebody is at my door, so I've got to step away for a moment to take
All
care
right.
of this.
Well, we're going to jump into this next part of the show. That's right. This is the part of the show all about human factors news. This is where we talk about anything related to the field of human factors. This could be medical, privacy, security, robotics, AI, you name it. As long as it relates to the field of human factors, it's fair game for Blake and I to sit here and talk about it on the show. Blake, what do we got up first this week?
All right, so up first this week, and I think up only this week, we've got Microsoft patenting chatbot technology to revive dead loved ones. So Microsoft has been granted a patent that would allow the company to make a chatbot using the personal information of deceased people. The patent describes creating a bot based on the images, voice data, social media posts, electronic messages, and more personal information. The specific person may also correspond to oneself. So, for example, the user creating or training the chatbot, Microsoft describes as implying that living users could train a digital replacement in the event of their death. That's mind-blowing. Microsoft has even included the notion of 2D or 3D models of specific people being generated via images and depth information or even video data. Like this. The idea that you would be able to speak to a simulation of someone who has passed on in the future is not new. Other tech companies have tried to use digital data to recreate loved ones who have passed on. But it seems like Microsoft's got the patent for the chatbot. This is way more mind-blowing than I expected. And I don't know, man. Just the sci-fi nature of life seems to come truer and truer the older that I get.
Yeah, it's we've talked about something similar before on the show. I think it was probably like a year or two ago where there was a chatbot, and I think we have some points to make about that specific one. To remind everyone, it was a let's see here, it was a company called Luca, where they used 8,000 lines of text messages to basically mimic somewhat the way somebody spoke, right? And what ended up happening in that case, the person who created it, who lost their friend, they claimed it was like a shadow of a person. The lines were there, but it kind of hit that uncanny valley, from that perspective. But what we're looking at here with Microsoft, this is interesting because it feels like more to me. This is a chatbot that is using a sort of aggregate of data about somebody, right? They mentioned 2D, 3D models by images and depth information, video data. They're also using voice data, social media posts, electronic messages, all this stuff. Aggregating, the other one was just used off of text messages. This one is aggregating a bunch of different points of information to recreate digitally someone that has passed on. And this reminds me so much of that Black Mirror episode.
Oh, yeah, you're totally right, man. It reminds me, that's a really good analog for this for sure. It's just nuts to think about like using social media posts along with voice data and electronic messages, because I don't know. I wonder how close that would feel to other people that know the person, depending on like how they use social media, or like if they kind of present a different personality depending on like the social media account they're using. So I feel like it could give like a mixed result depending on how it all works together. Because you're right, it does give more information, but is it genuine enough information to create like a simulation of somebody, basically?
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to find that episode. I just don't remember what it was. But it was an episode where basically this exact thing happened. Somebody died and somebody authorized permission to use a bunch of different data points to recreate this person in a basically an android, right? So they were talking the way this person talked. They were, making jokes that were inside jokes to the other person. There were, a lot of things going on. And it was, it hit that uncanny valley at some point. So, I, I just think this is, man, I don't know. Can we talk about ethics here? Because,
yeah,
like I'd imagine it's one thing if somebody's dead and then you are able to like who owns this data once you die. Is it if Microsoft owned your stuff and you use a Hotmail account or a Gmail, or sorry, not a Gmail, Outlook account, can somebody else authorize that because Microsoft technically owns that data? And I don't know, man. Like your gaming history on Xbox, like they have a lot of stuff on you.
yeah.
So, down to the patterns in which you would play a game.
Yeah.
Like, they could use all that to infer something about you. Big data is scary. But yeah, we can talk about ethics from two perspectives, like who owns that data once you die. And then we can talk about the perspective of, okay, I give them the permission to use my data because I'm actually training my replacement. And, like that's a whole nother conversation. So let's have the ethics conversation first. Blake, is this ethical?
I don't know. I mean, if you're able to consent and get, like, if you were able to train your own AI bot, or if you felt like that this concept, like if it was presented to you, like, on a website or in a webinar or whatever, and you agreed with the idea, sure. But I would want to know the timeline and who owns the stuff at the end of it. Like, does my family own it? And so they're the only ones that can give out access to it. Does Microsoft end up getting to keep some kind of carbon copy almost of this stuff sitting around somewhere from, their systems to learn and get better from?
I would absolutely think that would be the case.
Oh, they'd have to, because that's the only way this is going to get so good that it feels realistic. That's my ignorant perspective. The other thing that I worry about, and if this is outside of the ethics line, let me know. But I also worry about the concern of, I get the idea of closure, right? So if somebody dies, you want to have like a conversation with a chatbot. But do you have to put a cap on that? Do you just let this thing exist forever and could basically change the course of somebody's life because they're never able to separate from that person they lost? And so they're always reliant on this service. That, back to the ethics thing, like how does this work from a monetary standpoint? Is this like a service you have to subscribe to use? Is this a one-time thing? So it's just like there's all of these, there's money-making aspects of it that make me not, I don't know any other way to say this, don't make me feel good on the inside. I think it's a really cool concept, and for things like being able to recreate your loved one or even past figures that are like really big in the world in terms of like their intellect or their kind of contribution to society, it could be awesome and have a lot of potential. But the ethics of it, I'm very unsure of and kind of wary of at this point. And I'm not pointing that finger at Microsoft. I just think the idea as a whole always has the potential to be exploited or used in a way that doesn't make a whole lot of sense from the ethics standpoint. But what do you think, Nick?
To me, this has a lot of similarity with the issue with facial recognition software. I think we are at a point right now where, as a society, this idea is still new enough, and the implications of this technology are still widely unknown. And so the fact that we can doesn't mean we should. And I think that is absolutely true for both things like facial recognition and carrying on somebody's life after they're dead through the use of a chatbot or even a 3D model that uses your voice and likeness. Now, all that being said, if somebody gives the okay right? Like, let's say I am on this podcast and I give Microsoft, I'm not, but I give Microsoft, the okay, hey, you can use my likeness. Don't show my family. You can use it for research purposes. And I will agree to train it. Like, this is me actually agreeing, right? So then it's completely fine. And someone's going to take this out of context, I know, but like,
but I mean, could you imagine that? Like, instead of organ transplant, it's like check the box to have your data be used so that we can create things like this.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's kind of nuts, right?
That's so nuts.
Can we move on to the training of it? Because I kind of was getting into that transition there anyway.
Let's
but
go.
The idea of training your own chatbot about like what you would and wouldn't say, like, how would that work? Because you don't even know what you're going to say a lot of the time in a situation, right? Like, how many times have you been in this situation, Blake? You're sitting there and someone goes, hey, what would you say if this happened? And you're like, I don't know. It hasn't happened to me. Have you ever had that happen to you before?
Yep. Or I have to like think of it to even try and concoct an answer.
Right. Right. And so it's like, how can you prepare for something that you yourself don't know how you'll react? And how can you better train an AI to do it for you in a situation that is novel, right? So like,
yeah,
I don't know. Like I can see situations where it's like, hey, what would happen if somebody came up to you and said, do you want $1 million? Like, yes. What's the catch, right? Like you would ask what the catch is, and then what's the condition, and then if the condition was reasonable, you would get the $1 million. And I would imagine you could play some hypothetical games like that with your AI, and see if they can come up with a similar answer. I can also see them coding up intentionally wrong answers that as you're talking with them, as you're training with them, they are they know it's wrong, and they send it out in the world hoping that you'll catch it. And if you do, then it's a positive reinforcement for that is the incorrect behavior. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's like some interesting data collection pieces of it too. And then how would that work? Would you just chat with it on your phone? Be like, hey, Nick, what's up? Hey, Nick, what's up? It's like, I just said that.
That would be so insane. Like, although I much prefer the phone concept than like seeing a 2D or 3D rendering of myself and trying to talk to that. So I would talk to the phone all day, and I would probably get a kick out of it, but I would likely not be feeding it the correct information. I would just be laughing at it like I do when I argue with Siri. But like even the concept that you brought up of like in that situation of the $1 million thing, like right. Those traditional anchoring theories that Kahneman and Tversky put forth, that basically like how we think about decision making. But how wild is it that we would have to program that underlying decision logic that we understand about human psychology to a chatbot for it to be able to make those weighted decisions in a logical way, and then spin on that. Even when those like maxims of decision making psychology, you still have variation depending on the person. So you and I make decisions widely differently, I'm sure, on different topics depending on whatever it is. So
no, we're the same person, Blake. Actually, we're the same chatbot. We're chatting with each other.
Yeah, I'm the 2D.
I don't know if you know this.
Yeah, I'm the 2D, you're the 3D one. That's what happened. But I don't know. It's just there's so much interesting just programming and software logic that has to be in place for like I don't know any other way to put this, and this feels crude, but like the blank chatbot that you start with, that thing is intense as it is. And then once you start adding all the different things into it.
So I don't think actually that part might be as difficult as you might imagine, right? Humans in nature operate very similarly in certain situations. And so I'd imagine that there's some template that they use, and then it's just minor preferences here or there that help define that chatbot. And it's almost like a series of maybe 1,000 boxes that they check, but the underlying processing, the underlying I guess program of this thing would be the same. And that's kind of how I'm thinking of it. It's like they derive the 1,000 checkboxes by things that you say, the things that you do, the things that the data that they get from you. And I'm simplifying with 1,000 checkboxes. I think it's probably more like 100,000 checkboxes or a million checkboxes. But just to put it in scale, right? Because I mean, you think about 1 million checkboxes, that seems like a lot, but then think about all the underlying code that's also going on that is helping define what that chatbot is in the first place, and it's a template that uses that input data, and I'd imagine you can get pretty specific, right? And I always wonder, I don't think you'll ever get to the same fidelity of a human. Would it pass the Turing test? And then I'd imagine it could with other people that don't know you, but then could it pass that same test with somebody that you know, right?
Yeah, there's the potential that I think it could, because it's almost like if this is even close to how it really functions, because I just don't understand the underlying technology well enough to say 100% this makes sense. But if it really is, like, you kind of get this blank starting point, and basically it's you giving inputs to the system that's developing the nuance, so developing the you aspect of the chatbot, then yeah, I would assume that, if you put it in front of my mom and there was like a humor aspect to it, then it probably could pull off answering things the way that I would, in like a snarky way or something for specific topics. So I think it could fool some people that you're close to, for sure, or it would be an interesting test. Now, would it like fool everyone? I don't know. I'm not sure, because at the end of the day, I think there's nuance that comes with it that I don't know how a chat system, or I don't understand how it would pick up on some of those things.
Yeah,
I don't know. It would be so fun to train my own chatbot, though.
Oh man, yeah. I guess, like, I don't know. I'm still like really wary of it, right? And then I'd be like, shut it off as soon as I am gone, because I don't want anybody else messing with this thing.
Yeah, it's a weird concept, right? Because you could basically be creating a really biased version of yourself, for better or worse, to present to somebody you think is going to use this, right?
Right.
I don't know. Yeah,
I would never do that.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know how to have that conversation, right? Because like potentially there's people in your life that, like, you're not necessarily a bad person, but you've done things you're not proud of, and you wouldn't tell them. So maybe in that instance it's enough, and I don't know. It's a really complicated subject, like the ethics part, the how does the technology work itself, and then the what the end product ends up being. Just could blow my mind, because it could be anything you want it to be, just depending on the input data you're giving it.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts just to think about the problem space and what the implications are. I don't really have a whole lot more to say on this. I feel like I'm just spinning my wheels here. This was a good story. Do you have anything else? Any last words on this one?
No, I don't. I think it's incredible, though, that it's patented now, because we've seen it come up in a couple of different formats. But for Microsoft to take a hold of it, that makes me think that at least by the time that you and I are old, we'll see some renditions of this somewhere.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much to our Patreon patrons for choosing this story this week. You know what? Our patrons choose our story every week. And thank you to our friends over at The Independent for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, we do post links to the original articles in our Slack as we find them. So join us over there for more discussion. And there's a lot more over there, too, that we don't talk about on the show. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to see what's going on in the human factors community right after this. Back. So before we get into this next part of the show that we call the It Came From, I just want to remind everybody that if you're watching, listening, whatever, we got a couple things going on here. So let me first say, if you're listening to the show, we're back on YouTube. It's a thing that we're trying out. We're trying it this week. We're trying it next week. We're back on. You'll get the full Human Factors cast experience. We're actually doing a like pre-show and a little bit of a post-show on it. You're getting the whole raw nitty-gritty. You're not getting the polished show. So if you're interested in that type of thing, you want to know what's going on behind the scenes, how this works, even get in on chat action. We'll bring in any chats that happen as we're talking on the show. So that's fun. Yeah, we're back on YouTube. Again, it's not going to be like the polished stuff like we used to put out. But it's going to be something. We'll say that.
It'll adapt over time. It'll be great.
Yeah. So we're looking to, bottom line, we're just looking to connect with our community a little bit more. And we feel like we can do that and grow our community as well by, making sure that we make an effort to be visible and be on all the platforms. So I want to mention that we also have Human Factors Minute that's not mentioned in the Patreon commercial. So if you're listening and want to check that out, it's a little bite-sized, chunk of human factors every week directly to your RSS feed. And we love that. So you know what? If you're also a Patreon, they choose the news, like I alluded to. So do that. Anyway, let's go ahead and switch gears here and get into this next part of the show. It came from Slack. This is, or not Slack, this is Reddit this week. I got it in the show notes wrong. Anyway, this is the part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics the community is talking about. And today we got two little Reddit things here for you. Blake, which one do you want to do first?
Let's start with the distributed teams. I think that's pretty sick.
All right. So this one is by user Rando Atrophy. This is from the user experience subreddit, but it's relevant to human factors. Feedback on distributed teams. For those of you who work on distributed teams, how are team members seeking feedback from each other on designs, or if you're human factors, any sort of product ideas? More importantly, how is your team ensuring this team first mindset, especially when everyone is working on something different? Blake, do you work on any distributed teams in the time of COVID, and how do you provide feedback or get feedback from others?
Yeah, so for me, I did not work in a distributed team until COVID, so it's like a forced function. And I've definitely learned a couple of things. The one thing I wanted to throw at you, Nick, because I don't necessarily know what this phrase means. So it says in here, more importantly, how is your team ensuring that this team first mindset, especially when everyone's working on something different? Do you think that's trying to get at, like, no matter if you're not working on the same project or product or not, you still like take the time to give feedback or to work with other teams?
I see that more of a our success is measured by the success of the team and not necessarily by the individual. And so, like, if you are a human factors practitioner working with a web coder and working with a designer, how do you ensure that you all together work effectively as a team? That's kind of how I'm reading it anyway.
Gotcha. Honestly, the biggest thing has just been over communication from my perspective. So if you're not able to set up meetings, like there's not time to for my teams, it was taking a reassessment of that, like trying to find when they're, especially from me as a designer and developer perspective, like finding and putting in like set times that I was definitely working, but setting checkpoints probably a couple times a week to check in with my teams on either my progress, questions I had, and make it consistent. It didn't mean it had to be, an hour or 45 minutes. It could be, 30-minute check-ins unless we were doing something collaborative. But for me, a lot of this, like making sure that we're in sync and giving each other feedback that's meaningful, it was just checking in and being honest when like you hit a wall and not really just, letting the fact you're not sitting in an office or an environment that you're usually in kind of be a barrier. And also, I reached out to a bunch of people through Design Lab that I mentor courses for, and asked them, because I know people that work at that company are already distributed. I know a lot of mentors already had distributed jobs, and so that was kind of their feedback to me. It's just like over communicate through teams, like be very thorough in the messages you put together and thoughtful about the questions that you're asking, and kind of don't be afraid just to set up quick calls and check-ins, even if it's 5 minutes. So that was kind of my way of adapting to this need for a distributed team. But Nick, you have a remote job already? So what kind of like practices were you able to pull on?
Let me quickly just recap my history here. So a year ago, I was on a team that we worked together in the same space with one member who was remote, and we had a weekly meeting where we would kind of discuss things. But being it was convenient that everybody was in the same building before COVID times, because then you could just run something by them, walk over to their office, run something by them. I left that for another position where it was completely remote, and in this position, I worked closely with a couple individuals who I trusted a lot, and so a lot of stuff just got done through basic chat. And it was a lot of what you were saying there, Blake. It was the over communication. I had a couple other people in a similar role to myself that I could bounce ideas off of. And in terms of getting feedback from others, it was very much regularly scheduled things that were once a week, twice a week. You produce something, you give it to the team, and everyone provides feedback in the in the meeting, but then also alone and separately through something like Microsoft's Teams or something. There's like the you can collaborate on a certain document, you can leave comments for other people, and so it is all about that communication aspect. And now I'm in another position where I'm working on a team where I'm the only human factors person on the team. I'm working with a designer, a web developer, and project leader, and all that stuff. And so it's a little different now, especially because not only do I have to evangelize what I do and what I'm good for, I have to communicate with that team. And what we've done is we've set up a daily recurring meeting for 15 minutes just to say, hey, what did we work on yesterday? What did we work on today? What's any impediments that we're facing, and kind of like a like a scrum meeting. It's literally just a stand up every day, and that's been especially helpful because I'm the only West Coast person on that team. Everyone else is on the East Coast, and so it's very much a group effort to make sure that we're all talking together, we're all coordinated. And if there's ever anything that I need from the other team members in terms of feedback, I make sure I send it out with as much detail as I can, kind of explaining, like I said, I'm the only human factor person. So I explain the context of what it is, and I explain exactly what I'm looking for in terms of feedback. And that's been really helpful, because then the people that do look it over and provide a review on it are able to, provide that feedback in a way that's meaningful to me. So if you are looking for feedback from others, contextualize it and specify exactly what it is you're looking for in terms of feedback. You don't want to say, hey, what do you think about this design? And then they come back and say, do this, that, the other thing. And I was like, oh, well, actually, I was just looking for feedback on the general concept and not necessarily the button placement. But okay. And likewise, if someone asks you for feedback, clarify with them, hey, what's the context of this? What type of specific feedback are you looking for? That way I make sure you don't waste anybody's time. You don't waste your time doing something that they don't want. It is all about the communication aspect, though. Blake, thank you for taking that from me. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest tip I got from people that work remotely. The one other thing I want to throw out here, because it's something I ran into today, and I super encourage you, if you don't work in a environment, even if it's remote, that doesn't allow you to use a lot of these like powerful UX tools that have cloud components to them, like being able to share code directly from a prototype you create, or share online, design systems that you create, or collaborate and use some of the in-browser or in-app or in-cloud app, commenting tools. Use the tools that you have to your advantage, because I think a lot of the modern UX design tools, they're really made to support collaborative and distributed work. So use what you have at your disposal as you're able to.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to get into this next one here. Any last thoughts, Blake, before I move on?
Have at it, man. Let's go.
Communicate. All right. This next one here is also from the user experience subreddit. Again, we're going to frame this from the UX perspective. It's very simple. This one is from user deleted. So I don't know, man.
Some person that didn't want this out there anymore.
How do you collaborate with non-designers or non-human factors people? How do you do it?
You don't. Why would you do that? Doesn't make any sense. No. So, I mean, for
Give me something better than that.
This one's interesting. because I wish there was more context here, because I would love to know like where that's coming from, or it's like they're trying to figure out how to communicate with a specific type of person, or is it like presenting designs to PMs or whatever it might be. Ultimately, and I'm going to take this one from, I'm going to steal kind of a concept that Elise taught me. If you've listened to the show before, we've had Elise on the show a number of times. Definitely a great human factors and medical human factors kind of expert, if you will. But she is really big on this thing of understanding somebody else's communication style. And that has been immensely helpful. So there's no real great pointers I have for how to do this, but it does take some time from being willing to learn how somebody thinks, how they best receive feedback, and how they ultimately communicate with you best. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of time. I think what Nick mentioned in the last feedback on distributed teams Reddit post about basically putting context forward to somebody, I think that can really, really help somebody who's not a designer or not a human factors person understand the level of information you're looking for back from them. And with that context, they can kind of feel free to like roam within the box or the realm that they're comfortable in. So ultimately, it's just kind of getting to know your teammates and sometimes asking the blunt questions of how do you receive feedback, or how do you typically work with people best? But Nick, so how do you deal with like communicating with people that don't understand or don't necessarily come from your profession?
Man, I feel like I kind of answered this in the other question.
Yeah.
But I'll reiterate and I will elaborate. So again, like we have a daily meeting where we talk about what we're doing. I make sure to try my best during those meetings to communicate the why. And I think that goes a long way for explaining the sort of painstaking efforts that I take to do things and capture data in a certain way. I think explaining the why kind of ropes them in on the, it kind of lets them see behind the curtain and kind of highlights the importance of what you're doing if you explain the why, right? Why are you collecting time on task? Well, I'm actually collecting time on task to see how effective they are at, getting to this specific thing. And so, hey, I'm going to have one of you guys watch this usability test with me, but I don't want you to talk until I tell you to. Well, why am I not having you talk? It's because I want to watch them struggle. I want this. I really want this to, for anybody else who watches this video, I want them to really understand that this is a hard thing for users to do. And so that's, explaining the why. And then in terms of, actually collaboration, right? So that's communication piece. And then there's the whole collaboration piece as well. There's, I have done the research and I've come up with these results, and now I need to pass it over to you, the designer, to implement these things in a way that is going to make sense. And I think gentle prods is best to start off with and say, hey, what would happen if, instead of, I think this should go there. Say, hey, what would happen if we put that there instead? And that's just, it is a communication style thing. But, I like to lead with the gentle nudges and help them get to that conclusion themselves for human factors related things. And then if it still continues to be a problem, I'll be a little bit more direct and say, hey, some of the data that I've collected on this would suggest that they probably need this over here. And then, provide a little bit more background and data, but subtle nudges first. And again, it's all about explaining the why, right? Well, why do we need to move that thing over there, organize these in a certain way? Well, it's because the user's workflow is exactly, you were on those calls, you saw what happened. And that's another strategic thing I'm doing too, is I'm including my team that's not human factors people. I'm including them on these like usability studies, so that way they get to see the process firsthand. Inclusion goes a long way, making sure they're part of that process. So that way, when I come back later and say, yeah, you were there, you saw it, I can, it's an extra tool in my belt that I can just kind of throw and say, yeah, that should be that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good approach too. I mean, you've basically knocked that one out of the park, because you're doing a really good job of, it sounds like, educating people and not just letting them kind of like have, because I don't know, you and I have worked with people throughout our careers or in the past that kind of give you the it is what it is answer to questions versus the why and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I mean, for me, it's always been about the why, right? Why are you suggesting it to be that way? I just want to understand what's going on in your head, or what data that you have that I don't have that led you to that conclusion. And so I'm trying my best to pay that forward and say, I came to this conclusion because of X, Y, and Z, and be very logical about it and hope that other people follow that same logic. And if they don't, we can have a conversation about it. And that's why it's so important to kind of show your work and show your thought process to where you get to, because otherwise people don't get those leaps in logic unless you spell it out for them. Got to do your homework. As someone once told me.
Someone once told you. That's awesome.
All right. Anything else, Blake?
Not really, man. I think you really covered a lot of good ground on that specific one. I don't know. I enjoy talking to people that don't do the same thing that I do, because it feels like it gives me a fresh perspective. So I think if I was going to add one more thing, it was just kind of being open to the person you're working with or the different department you're working with, because I think you'll ultimately pick up some things you didn't have and put them in your toolbox like they will from you. So
yeah, and I think humility goes a long way too, right? Like adding on to that one more thing is that I was told this once and I've never stopped believing it. It's that whoever you talk to knows at least one thing that you don't. And so try to find it. And if that, especially when it comes to working on something together, if they know something that you don't, that's another piece of information that you now have that you can make decisions on the thing for. All right. With that, let's get out of here. That's it for today, everyone. Let us know what you guys think of the news story this week. If you want, you can join the discussion on our Slack or follow us on any of our social channels at H Factors Podcast. If you like what you hear, you can support the show. You can leave us a review on your podcast medium of choice. Consider supporting us on Patreon, or just let somebody else know about the show. Anything helps. And of course, you can always reach us at our home on the web, humanfactorscast.com, and now streaming on YouTube. I want to thank Mr. Blake Arnsdorff for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about where you got all the hot graphics for this show?
Oh, man, you can find me in the Human Factors Cast Slack, always at Blake, but you can also find me across social media at Don't Panic UX.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning in to Human Factors Cast. Until next time, it depends. All right, so stop recording.
Stop. Okay, cool.
We're still live on YouTube, right?
Yes, we are still live on YouTube. And hello to the one person if you're still watching.
Hello on YouTube. If you're still watching, that's the show. That's how we do it. We do it in one take. There's no edits unless Blake has somebody at the door. I'll edit that out.
God, that was the worst.
That's how we do the show. And so you'll get that insight. Next week, I think we're going to try to actually do show notes live too. So that way you kind of get a little insight into how we do things. For now, though, I don't know how much else we got for an after show. Maybe someday I will stream actually putting the show together, but I usually do that about an hour separated from the show. Just let it sit and make sure I got all my notes.
Let it marinate.
Let it marinate a little bit and get dinner, because we're recording here. It's like 6:00. So anyway, I don't have anything else. Blake, you got anything for the one person watching right now? Maybe more in the future?
I don't. I appreciate anybody that hung out, though, because there was a fair amount of people that trickled in and out throughout the show. So this was a lot of fun. It was cool to just do this and see this kind of produced again. And I enjoyed putting together the Streamlabs stuff. So I look forward to continuing to kind of crank on this thing.
Yeah, huge thanks to Blake for getting everything together. All right, man.